Welcome back. In tonight's episode, we're venturing into the heart of Lagos, Nigeria, where something deeply disturbing and utterly terrifying happened just a few years ago. This story takes place in a bustling neighborhood known for its vibrant markets and cramped apartment buildings, a place where locals know which streets to avoid after dark, and visitors often find themselves in situations they never bargained for. So what happened there? Well, let's just say it's the kind of experience that makes you never want to trust a friendly stranger offering help again. Let's dive in. Back in 2021, a British engineer we'll call Marcus was in Lagos for a 3-month contract with an oil company. He wasn't completely new to Africa, he'd worked in Angola before, but Nigeria was different. The energy was intense, the hustle never stopped, and everything moved at a pace that took some getting used to. Marcus had rented a small apartment in Victoria Island, nothing fancy but clean and reasonably safe. The building was typical for the area, concrete block construction, narrow hallways, and thin walls that meant you could hear your neighbors' conversations whether you wanted to or not. Most of the other tenants were young professionals, local workers, and a few other expats like himself. On this particular evening, Marcus was dealing with a problem that had been driving him crazy for weeks. His internet connection kept cutting out, and in his line of work, reliable internet wasn't just convenient, it was essential. He'd called the service provider multiple times, but getting a technician to actually show up was proving to be nearly impossible. That's when his neighbor knocked on his door. The man introduced himself as Tunde, a friendly guy in his 30s who lived just down the hall. "I heard you on the phone earlier," he said with a warm smile. "Internet problems?" Marcus nodded, frustrated. "Listen," Tunde continued, "my cousin works for one of the big telecom companies. He's really good with this stuff and he's not expensive. I could ask him to stop by tomorrow evening if you want." Marcus was grateful. Finally, someone who might actually be able to help. They exchanged phone numbers and Tunde promised to call his cousin that night. The next evening, right on schedule, there was a knock at Marcus's door. Standing there was a young man in a crisp uniform with the logo of a major Nigerian telecom company. He had an ID badge, a toolkit, and the professional demeanor you'd expect from a technician. "Good evening, sir," he said politely. "I'm here about your internet connection. Tunde sent me." Marcus let him in without hesitation. The technician, who introduced himself as Joseph, immediately got to work. He tested the modem, checked the cables, and ran diagnostics on Marcus's laptop. After about 20 minutes, he announced that he'd found the problem. "Your connection is being throttled because of outdated settings," Joseph explained. "I can fix it, but I'll need to reconfigure your entire network setup. It'll take about an hour, and I'll need to access your router's admin panel." It all sounded legitimate to Marcus. Joseph seemed to know what he was talking about, and he was using technical terms that made sense. "Sure," Marcus said, "whatever you need to do." That's when Joseph pulled out a small device that looked like a USB drive. "This is a configuration tool," he explained. "I need to plug it into your laptop temporarily to download your current settings. Then I can optimize them." Marcus watched as Joseph inserted the device into his laptop's USB port. Immediately, several windows popped up on the screen, command prompts, file directories, and programs Marcus didn't recognize. "Just standard diagnostic software," Joseph assured him, typing rapidly. "This will help me see exactly what's slowing down your connection." But Marcus was starting to feel uneasy. The programs on his screen didn't look like network diagnostics, they looked like something else. File management systems. Remote access tools. "What exactly is that software doing?" Marcus asked, moving closer to his laptop. Joseph's demeanor changed slightly, still professional, but more hurried. "Just backing up your current settings so I can restore them if something goes wrong," he said. Very standard procedure. But Marcus could see file names scrolling past on the screen, his documents, his work files, his personal photos. Everything was being copied. "Hey, stop," Marcus said firmly. "That's not network configuration. You're copying my files." Joseph's hands froze over the keyboard. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then Joseph slowly pulled the USB device from the laptop and stood up. "Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said carefully. "I was just trying to help with your internet." But Marcus had seen enough. He grabbed his phone and started dialing. "I'm calling the police," he announced. Joseph didn't argue. He didn't make excuses. He simply picked up his toolkit and walked toward the door. "Thank you for your time, sir," he said politely, as if nothing had happened. After Joseph left, Marcus immediately checked his laptop. Files that contained sensitive work documents, client information, and personal banking details had all been accessed and copied. His heart sank as he realized the scope of what had almost happened. Then he remembered Tunde. Marcus marched down the hall and pounded on Tunde's door. No answer. He tried again, calling out Tunde's name. Still nothing. Finally, he went to the building manager and asked about the tenant in that apartment. The manager looked confused. "That unit's been empty for 2 months," he said. "The previous tenant moved out, and we haven't found a new renter yet." Marcus felt his blood run cold. He described Tunde, the friendly neighbor who had offered to help. The manager shook his head. "I don't know anyone by that description in this building," he said, "and I know all the tenants." That's when it hit Marcus. Tunde wasn't his neighbor. He was part of an elaborate scam designed to gain access to his apartment and his computer. The technician wasn't there to fix his internet. He was there to steal his data, and Marcus had let him in willingly, even helpfully. Later, Marcus learned that this type of scam was becoming increasingly common in Lagos. Criminals would pose as helpful neighbors, building relationships with potential targets over days or weeks. Then, they'd manufacture a problem and offer a solution that required access to the victim's home or personal devices. The goal was always the same: steal valuable information that could be used for identity theft, corporate espionage, or financial fraud. Marcus spent the next week changing passwords, notifying his bank, and explaining to his company's IT department what had happened. Fortunately, he'd caught the scam before any real damage was done. But the experience left him shaken. He realized how easily he'd been manipulated, how quickly his desire for help had overridden his caution. From that day forward, Marcus never again accepted help from strangers, no matter how friendly or legitimate they seemed. Because sometimes, when someone offers to solve your problems, they're actually creating much bigger ones. Our second story takes place in Accra, Ghana, where a young American entrepreneur named Sarah thought she'd found the opportunity of a lifetime. Sarah had just graduated from business school and was looking for ways to make her mark in emerging markets. She'd read articles about Africa's growing economy, the opportunities in technology and infrastructure, and she was determined to be part of it. Sarah wasn't naive. She'd done her research. She knew about the challenges of doing business in West Africa, the bureaucracy, the cultural differences. But she was confident in her abilities and excited about the potential for growth. That's what brought her to Ghana in the first place. She'd been in Accra for about 2 weeks, attending networking events and meeting with potential partners when she met David at a business conference. David was a well-dressed Ghanaian businessman in his 40s who claimed to work in import-export. He had business cards, a professional website, and references from other international partners. Most importantly, he seemed to understand exactly what Sarah was looking for. "You want to get into the telecommunications market," David said over coffee after the conference. "That's smart, very smart. The growth potential here is enormous." He leaned forward, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "I have connections with the government telecommunications authority. I can help you get the permits and licenses you need, but it has to be done the right way." Sarah was intrigued. Getting proper licensing in Ghana was notoriously difficult and time-consuming. If David could expedite the process, it would save her months of bureaucratic delays. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked. David smiled. "A partnership. You provide the capital and the technical expertise. I provide the local knowledge and government connections. We split the profits 50-50. It sounded reasonable. More than reasonable, it sounded like exactly the kind of local partnership her business school professors had recommended for emerging markets. Over the next few days, David showed Sarah around Accra, introducing her to what he claimed were government officials, potential clients, and other business partners. Everyone seemed to know him, and everyone spoke positively about his reputation and connections. Sarah was impressed. Then David made his proposal. "There's a telecommunications contract coming up," he explained. "Government project to expand mobile coverage to rural areas. It's worth about 2.3 million over 3 years. With my connections, I can guarantee we get the contract, but we need to show good faith to the selection committee." "What kind of good faith?" Sarah asked. "A deposit," David said. "Standard practice here. Shows we're serious, that we have the financial capacity to complete the project. Once we get the contract, the deposit is applied to the first payment." Sarah had heard about deposits and advance payments in African business deals. Her research had warned her to be cautious, but David's explanation seemed legitimate. "How much are we talking about?" she asked. $200,000, David replied. "I know it sounds like a lot, but this is a 2.3 million contract. The return on investment is incredible." Sarah hesitated. $200,000 was a significant portion of her startup capital, but David seemed to sense her concern. "Look," he said, "I understand your hesitation. This is a big step, but I'm putting up money too, $50,000 of my own, and I have a guarantee." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out an official-looking document with government letterhead. "This is a performance bond from the Ghana Telecommunications Authority," he explained. "It guarantees that if the contract falls through for any reason, we get our deposit back in full plus interest." Sarah examined the document. It looked legitimate, official stamps, signatures, even a government seal. The letterhead matched the official GTA website she'd researched. Everything seemed to check out. Still, she wanted to be careful. "I'd like to verify this with the GTA directly," she said. "Of course," David agreed. "I'll arrange a meeting, but Sarah, I need to be honest with you, there are other international investors interested in this project. If we don't move quickly, we could lose the opportunity." The next day, David took Sarah to what appeared to be a government office building in central Accra. They met with a man who introduced himself as a deputy director of the Ghana Telecommunications Authority. He confirmed the details of the contract, praised David's reputation, and assured Sarah that the project was legitimate and lucrative. What Sarah didn't know was that the government office was actually a rented conference room in a business center. The deputy director was an actor David had hired. The performance bond was a sophisticated forgery, complete with fake seals and signatures. Convinced that the opportunity was real, Sarah agreed to the partnership. She transferred $200,000 to an account David provided, which he claimed was the official government escrow account for the project. David transferred his supposed $50,000 contribution to the same account. For the first week after making the payment, everything seemed normal. David provided regular updates on the contract approval process, sent official-looking emails with government letterhead, and even arranged what he claimed was a site visit to one of the areas where the telecommunications infrastructure would be installed. But then the communication started becoming less frequent. David's responses to Sarah's emails became shorter and less detailed. Phone calls went unanswered. When Sarah tried to contact the GTA deputy director she'd met, the number was disconnected. Growing suspicious, Sarah decided to visit the Ghana Telecommunications Authority offices herself. When she asked about the rural telecommunications contract David had described, the officials looked confused. "We don't have any such project in development," they told her, "and we've never heard of David Mensah." That's when Sarah realized she'd been the victim of an elaborate advance fee fraud, a type of scam so common in West Africa that it has its own name, the 419 scam, named after the section of the Nigerian criminal code that addresses it. She immediately went to the police and reported the fraud. The investigation revealed that David wasn't his real name. The business address he'd provided was fake, and the bank account where she'd sent the money had been emptied within hours of her transfer. The money had been moved through a complex network of accounts across multiple countries, making it virtually impossible to recover. Sarah's $200,000 was gone, along with her dreams of building a telecommunications business in Ghana. She returned to the United States financially devastated and emotionally shattered. The experience taught her a painful lesson about the difference between legitimate business opportunities and elaborate scams designed to prey on ambitious entrepreneurs. The most disturbing part of the scam wasn't just the money she lost, but how sophisticated and convincing it had been. David and his accomplices had created an entire fictional business ecosystem, complete with fake offices, forged documents, and hired actors. They'd exploited Sarah's genuine desire to do business in Africa, turning her ambition and optimism against her. Today, Sarah works for a consulting firm in New York, helping other American companies navigate the legitimate opportunities and avoid the scams in African markets. She always tells her clients the same thing. If a business opportunity seems too good to be true, and if someone is pressuring you to move quickly, trust your instincts and walk away. No legitimate business deal requires you to hand over large sums of money to people you've just met. These stories from Nigeria and Ghana illustrate a harsh reality about travel and business in parts of Africa. Not everyone offering help has good intentions, and opportunities that seem too good to be true usually are. The common thread in both cases is trust. Marcus trusted his helpful neighbor Tunde because he seemed genuine and was offering to solve a real problem. Sarah trusted David because he had all the trappings of legitimacy, business cards, references, and official-looking documents. But criminals in major African cities have become increasingly sophisticated. They understand that modern travelers and business people are educated and cautious, so they've adapted their methods accordingly. They don't rely on obvious scams anymore. Instead, they build elaborate scenarios that can take weeks or months to execute, creating fake identities, forged documents, and convincing backstories. The lesson isn't to avoid Africa or to distrust everyone you meet. Millions of travelers visit African countries safely every year, and there are countless legitimate business opportunities across the continent. But it is important to remember that criminals everywhere target visitors who seem vulnerable, naive, or overly trusting. When someone approaches you with an unsolicited offer to help, ask yourself, what do they gain from helping me? If you can't answer that question, or if their explanation doesn't make sense, trust your instincts. When evaluating business opportunities, always verify credentials independently. Don't rely on documents or references provided by the person making the offer. Contact government agencies, regulatory bodies, and other businesses directly using contact information you find yourself, not what someone gives you. And most importantly, never let anyone pressure you into making quick decisions involving money or personal information. Legitimate opportunities don't disappear overnight, and honest people understand the need for due diligence. Africa is a continent of incredible diversity, opportunity, and beauty, but like any place where significant money and resources are involved, it also attracts those who would exploit the unwary. The key to staying safe is maintaining healthy skepticism while remaining open to genuine opportunities and authentic human connections. Remember, the best way to avoid becoming a victim is to stay alert, trust your instincts, and never let your guard down completely, no matter how friendly or legitimate someone seems. Because sometimes, the most dangerous predators are the ones who appear most helpful.